Welcome to 99th Monkey Liberty News for Monday, March 17th, 2014. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And some of the news is rather wild today. So I want to start out looking at how the fact that things seem bad doesn't necessarily mean that things are we're going to have a bad outcome. Really, I almost thought about starting this morning with a Howard Beale clip. Things are bad. You don't need me to tell you that things are bad. And I also thought about starting out talking a little bit about St. Patrick because he really was a miracle worker. He raised some people from the dead and did some remarkable things. But I actually want to begin just by framing the news of the day by saying that what I initially said, that the fact that things seem to be bad does not mean that there will be bad outcomes. This is 1 Samuel 30. This is from the time when David had been hiding out from Saul in the wilderness for an extended period of time. And I'm sure they were all very weary and just wondering when these problems were going to end, wondering if they would spend their entire lives in the wilderness. And David would take his men on raids against their enemies. And they had been on a raid, and when David and his men came home to Ziklag on the third day, they found that the Amalekites had made a raid on the south and on Ziklag, and had struck Ziklag and burned it with fire, and had taken the women and all who were there, both great and small, captive. They killed no one, but carried them off and went on their way. So all of David's men's wives had been taken, children had been taken, goods had been taken, and David was greatly distressed, for the men spoke of stoning him, because the souls of them all were bitterly grieved, each man for his sons and daughters. But David encouraged and strengthened himself in the Lord his God. And this event was occurring at almost exactly the same time that Saul was entering a battle wherein he was going to be killed. So this actually has a positive resolution. What David was experiencing, they followed the people who had done the raid against them and taken their families and possessions, caught them, and got back not only what they had before, but additional spoils. Again, at the same time, Saul was being killed, and David was ascending into a new place of being the king. So even though it appeared that all was lost, his men wanted to stone him. That means they wanted to kill him. He came through, he encouraged himself in the Lord his God, and rose above virtually all of the issues that were confronting him. So, as I said, I wanted to frame today's news in that frame of the fact that God has a plan and he means good for us. And we can depend on that. When things seem bad, like David, we can encourage ourselves in the Lord and see God move, see his glory, see him act on our behalf. We just need to be steadfast, encourage ourselves in the Lord, not give up. So now here's our first news item. Exploring the theories regarding Flight 370. This is from Jim Stone Freelance. Jim Stone often has some pretty wild stories and theories. And I'm not saying I agree with all of his theories here, but he has written a really good summary considering all the possibilities. All the theories that have been put forth. I don't think he gets into the alien theory here, but, neither am I going to. Some people do believe that that we're leading up to a moment where aliens are going to rescue us. Can't rule that out. Certainly can't rule out the possibility that there will be a fake of that. But I believe that what Jim Stone has written here has a lot more credence. And I don't absolutely agree with him on all points, but he makes a lot of sense here. And I was hoping that the new Fulford blog would be up before I did the video this morning. It's not. I'd really like to know Fulford's take on some of the more recent events. We'll have to wait for that, though. From LaRouche PAC, Investors Business Daily issues lists of what impeachment charges against Obama might look like. Now, Investors Business Daily is a pretty mainstream publication. It's for people who are learning to make stock picks according to a certain system, but it's also a pretty comprehensive, fairly conservative publication. I can't say it's absolutely conservative, but it's a financial publication. We subscribed to it for many years. We don't at this time, but it was always a joy to read. And it's very mainstream. I guess that's really what I'm trying to say. It's not alternative news. It's certainly not a conspiracy theory website. And yet there are people who are very seriously calling for the impeachment of Obama. And of course, last week I shared Lyndon LaRouche's j'accuse statement against Obama, which listed 10 charges and concluded the time for action is now. Impeach him now. So this is in the background, and anyone who has seen the film Wag the Dog or understands that principle, that the government, the high officials, what they do when they are in trouble, when we are looking at them under a microscope, they always want to give us a diversion to detract from the push against them. And certainly I believe that is very likely a part of what is going on with Ukraine. I'm a little surprised. Alex Jones is really focused on Ukraine and Russia. I'm not exactly sure why. It is a big deal, obviously. It could be a powder keg. We know the elite, the cabal, want to start World War III. But I don't really want to give my energy to that. I don't want to invest in that possibility. With this kind of pressure against Obama and others, with people waking up, I think it's really pretty likely that the cabal is, they might want to start World War III, but failing that, they'll make us believe that they're starting World War III, so that we are all in fear and trepidation and wondering how they're going to save us. Well, just as a reminder of how they're not going to save us, almost 70 years late, FBI quietly opened secret files that attest Hitler went to Argentina rather than committed suicide. We were led to believe after World War II that at the end of World War II that our government saved the world, the Americans saved the world from Hitler. Well, the government let Hitler go to Argentina, and this article is I bring it up for several reasons. The main one just being we really can't trust them. We really cannot trust the American government. We simply cannot. And another reason is the people who they tell us are our enemies are often secretly their friends. So when they try to stir up these global controversies, these wars, these world wars, it's important to remember who is really the enemy. And in many instances, what we call our government, it's really not. The U.S. corporate government is aligned with the people whom they are trying to sell us the idea of being our enemies. So just a reminder, don't believe the stories as they are being spun by the government. And Paul Craig Roberts has had a couple of interesting articles that came out over the weekend. This certainly has to do with Ukraine and Russia, because U.S. guys carrying others are blathering that, we have to go to war to protect these people in Ukraine. We have to protect the Crimean people. Here's the thing. They voted 95.7% to be aligned with Russia. So we can't possibly, nobody can spin that we have to go to war to protect these people from Russia. It just ain't so. This is a very interesting article from InfoWars, and I mentioned one day last week that I thought it was possible that they were stirring all this up with Russia because a lot of Americans who are awake are realizing that Russia is less corrupt than America at this time in history, that Putin is a better leader by leaps and bounds than Barack Obama, and that a controversy with Russia might be easier for them to spin into something they can use to arrest a lot of Americans who really are desirous of a better world. Well, now there is an executive order by which they can do that. Against Ukraine war, Obama may seize your assets. If they want to use this executive order to prevent people like you and me from criticizing the support of the U.S. for any illegitimate government that the EU and the U.S. have conspired to establish in Ukraine, we can have our properties blocked. What does that mean? That means you can't have access to it. So, think about this. And I'm not saying think about it so that you stop protesting, so that you stop exercising your First Amendment rights. I'm saying think about this so that you know how to protect yourself from having your assets blocked. If have some things on hand, and hey, just be prepared. And but if all of us continue to insist on our liberties, insist on exercising our First Amendment rights, obviously we can't all be rounded up. Well, I guess we could, but it makes it much less likely. So kick and scream. I mean, this is the time to behave like a 2-year-old and object to what is going on in the world, and what our government, how the U.S. government is participating in that. Here is another article from Paul Craig Roberts about that same topic. Obama declares self-determination to be a threat to U.S. national security. And this is, again, pertaining to the March 6th executive order blocking property of certain persons contributing to the situation in Ukraine. Can we use this executive order to block property of the government, of the U.S. government people who originally stirred up the problem in Ukraine, as we've had articles that give evidence of that? Now that would be good, but no, this is meant to limit people like you and me. Moving on from the Ukraine, I think that's enough on that subject. There is more going on. You can read about it, hear about it, certainly on InfoWars and other places. Just in case it is a giant wag the dog, I actually don't want to focus on it a whole lot. I really think that the main thing that they have planned is to use it as an excuse to silence us. So there you have that. From Mercy Triumphs, Fritz Springmeier wrote Inside Look at Bankers' Deaths. And this is a somewhat different perspective. He kind of, some people have said that the bankers who were killed were whistleblowers. Some people have said that they were killed because they were doing even worse things than the typical banker. And Fritz actually kind of ties it together, saying that some of the guys who died were blackmailing people, threatening to give information to the CIA and the NSA, and evidently they even did give some. So again, this is a very interesting article tying together some of the different ideas about the reasons for the banker deaths. This article from We Are Change, car dealers are terrified of Tesla's plan to eliminate oil changes. This is kind of a mix of good and bad news. A very interesting article. And some car dealers are not wanting to sell the Tesla cars because they will not make the money on service that they typically make. So there's a little struggle going on here, but again, it's good news because the Tesla cars can make you less dependent on the system. And since today is St. Patrick's Day, we have some happy little green news today with which we will end. Plant care today, how to make biodegradable mini planters from toilet paper rolls. So hey, you're recycling, you're growing something that's going to help you become more independent, and win-win, right? So here are these, it shows these the mini planters made from toilet paper rolls, and certainly this is the time of year to begin seedlings and be planting your garden. With that, thank you for tuning in for today's 99th Monkey Liberty News. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Hoping that you will love one another, take care, and insist on liberty.